Hello, class. It is so good to be with you again. In this video, we're exploring type in Adobe Illustrator. We will be looking at point type versus area type, when to use one versus the other, and what those distinctions are and why and all that. We will explore text on a path or inside of a path, so your text could follow along a curve, for example. We will look at formatting text, which is changing the type size, adjusting the spacing between letters, etc. And then finally, text outlines, where we turn our type into vector shapes that we can then edit with any of our normal vector editing tools. And it opens up all kinds of possibilities for logo design, etc. So it's amazing. Let's go check it out. Let's begin by coming over here to the Tools panel and looking for the Type tool. It is the letter T for Type tool. Brilliant move by Adobe to help us find the tool. You can also hit the letter key or the letter T on your keyboard to help you find this tool. If you click and hold down, you will notice many different kinds of type tools. These are very rarely used. 95% of the time, if not more, you will probably be using this major main type tool, okay? Now, with this tool activated, there's a distinction between point type and area type. I'm going to start by showing you point type, which is best used for slogans like brief phrases or a single word like the name of a business. And that's all that you're doing. And the benefit is that it allows you to resize it very readily. Whereas area type does something very different when you try to resize it. And those are for different purposes. Like there's actually an intention behind it. It's not like this random weird thing that doesn't make sense. There's actually a purpose to that. So let me try to explain by actually showing you. To activate point type, you click once. So I'm going to click once. And we're noticing a couple of things here. One is we're seeing this black rectangle. The black rectangle is saying, hey, there's type in here, and that type is selected. So I could simply start typing a word right now, and it's going to override what's there because it's selected, just like any word processing program would. And then we're also seeing this thing, this phrase, lorem ipsum, and that is nonsensical Latin language that is just placeholder text. It's just there for the designer to see the type size, the font choice, etc., and to make some different decisions. If you don't want to see placeholder text, you can always go to Illustrator, Preferences, Type, and if you come down here where it says Fill New Type Objects with Placeholder Text, you can click to turn that off. All right? Click OK. I tend to leave mine on. I like seeing it. Now, the next thing, I want to type in the word Zephyr. So that is selected right now. I could tell because it's black, that box. And I'm going to hit my letter, Z-E-P-H-Y-R, Zephyr. Okay? And this is acting just like any type tool would. I could hit my delete key, any word processing program, use type, and there's your words. It's awesome. Now, if you want to choose different type size, different fonts, etc., we're going to talk about it more in a little while, but right now, just really quickly, you make sure you select it first. So I'm clicking and dragging over the type I want to affect. And then with something selected over here in the Properties panel, it's showing us the different qualities of what we have selected. And you can see this character panel. It's a miniature version, but there's a lot of features there. You can choose a different font. You can choose the font style, whether it's regular or bold, the type size, etc. But when you get that where you want it, the next thing to do is come up here and click on the black arrow. When you click on the black arrow, we're now seeing the type as it is, the right color, the black, whereas before it was white to show that it was selected. And this is known as a text object. Text object. And it allows you, just like we did before with our other shapes and things we've been working with already in Illustrator, you can click and drag and move that around. You can hover in the corner and rotate it. If you hold down the shift key, you're going to snap it to those perfect 45-degree angles. Those things are amazing. Now, I must warn you of something dangerous, okay? So listen carefully. If I wanted to resize this, so say for example I wanted to resize this so it aligned really nicely in both the left and right sides of this letter, Z that's above it, if I came over here and clicked and dragged, notice that it's very easy to start stretching the type, okay? And you could very easily do that on accident. So always, 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 always hold down your shift key to keep those perfect proportions. The thing is that these types are very specific, like Myriad, Variable Concept, or Helvetica, or whatever type it is. People have spent hours upon hours designing the width and length of every little teeny part, like intensely. And you may or may not like what they've done, but if you're going to go stretch it around, it really starts distorting things. And most designers, if you've been designing for a while, you'll quickly recognize that someone has stretched the type and it looks immature, it looks unprofessional, and it is recognizable, okay? Now, are there times where you would very rarely want to use it for some like punk rock, stick it to the man kind of purpose? Yeah, that can happen, but most of the time, do not do that, okay? It is known as a type crime, and there's these little type police with little type helmets, like they wear them and they run around and like they'll come after you, man. They'll arrest you. They'll put you in typography jail. Like it happens. Obviously kidding there. Okay, now let's move on. So yeah, if you're going to resize type, and this is one of the features of point type, is that you can hold down that shift key and you can resize the type. So you're thinking of wanting to measure and fit something like we're doing right now, or you're trying to get it to fit on the width of a page for a poster or something like that. So that's what point type is good for. Now, let's compare and contrast that to area type. Maybe that's too far. Okay. I'm still going to grab that same type tool, the letter T on my keyboard, or I could click on it over here in the tools panel. Now with the type tool active, instead of one click, which would activate point type, I'm going to click and drag. This will create a box and it will create an area for the area type. When I release my click, we will see that it fills with that placeholder text. When I grab my black arrow, my selection tool, and I try to rotate this object, notice what happens. Instead of it rotating the type, it just rotates the box and the type just floats around inside of it like water inside of a bottle. Let me undo that. If I try to resize the type, it just gets pushed elsewhere, like the type stays the same size. Bigger, smaller, it stays the same size. When I make it smaller, there's type overflowing somewhere, and this little indicator at the bottom right corner of this text box is saying, hey, there's overset text. That's an official word, overset. So you want to look out for this. If you were paid to do an advertisement, they gave you specific text to use, and you were, rearranging it, playing around, etc., and this appears, that means that some of their text that they gave to you to design with is getting lost. So you want to make sure that everything appears in your design, whether you make the box bigger or you select the type and make the type smaller, whatever you need to do, you want to honor the client's request. Okay. Now, I also want to show you that not only can you just, type letters in there, gobbledygook, whatever, you can also, cut and paste text from other documents. I'm just grabbing my notes over there. I could come in here, select all of that, and paste, just like you would with the word processing program. Yeah, so all that is still true. Again, we're noticing that red box over here saying, hey, there's more contents in there. Let me get rid of this one. And I just want to show you one more way of bringing text into Illustrator. You can go to File, Place, and then navigate to a document. So sometimes the client will give you a document. Hey, here's all of the type, or the copy, it's often called, that we want in this advertisement or on this poster, what have you. And so you have to use the text they give you. So there's the file, you want to keep it. Instead of cutting and pasting and maybe accidentally not getting everything, you can use their actual file. Make sure you have Show Import Options turned on down here and click Place. There's some options here to either turn off or on. Usually you want to keep what they give you. and click OK. And it's just saying that I don't have the specific font that they used. I'm just going to click OK. We're now seeing that the cursor is loaded with that document. And it's saying 1 of 1 to show you that I've uploaded one document into the cursor. It's kind of a weird, cool thing, but if I had more than one uploaded into there, I could click, 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 and then drop those in as separate things. But I just have one, so I'm just going to click once here. And we're seeing all of that content is now brought in, all of that copy, all of that text. And this is an area text box. If I try to resize this box, that type is just going to float around. And one of the things that is useful with that little red, wow, it's way down here. So notice that it's keeping the bullet points, things that are capitalized, larger type versus smaller type. So it's holding some of that information. And it should have, instead of just making it all non-formatted at all. So now with this little red overset text icon, you can actually click on that. Notice that it's loading my cursor again. And you can come over and actually make another box or column and release that. And so what's happening now is that that text is overflowing, and obviously it's way too long. I can make this smaller, get it into my document. So now this text is flowing from this text box into this new area. All right, so there's a way to flow from column to column if you want to create that kind of design. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. There's more in there. So definitely I would need to make the type smaller to make it work in this case. Anyways, that's the main difference between point type and area type. Let's move on. In this section, I'll be showing you how to place text on top of a path, underneath a path, or inside of a path. First of all, we need a path. So I'm going to grab this paintbrush tool right here and simply click and drag a nice swoop. Now, I'm going to grab the type tool. Do I need to click and hold down and see all these other options of tools? No. I could just simply use the type tool. And notice that the type tool has kind of a box with it right now. If I hover over the path, that box will disappear when I get right over the path. And if I click at that point, it will plop in my placeholder type. Now, I could simply type in the phrase that I actually want to say, flowing down the river, something like this, ... Now, that is amazing. Look at this. I love it. And you can still do all the things you need to do, change the color by selecting it. Whoops, select it to affect it. All those things are still possible. Now, notice with it selected, there's some thin white lines at the beginning, the middle, and the end. So those are for the white arrow tool, and it will allow you to change the starting point. So I actually want it to start there on the path instead of over there. And you could actually move it from the middle as well to flow back and forth. And you can move the ending point. One thing to be wary of are these white squares at the end and at the beginning. In my mind, I want to think of them as anchor points, but they're not. They're text thread connectors. And so, for example, if I bring this one close enough to this text and it goes into that overset text mode, we're seeing that that white square is now a red one with a plus sign. And so we could click there and then come over here and send the text. You see this threaded line to this other thing. So that's what those are for. We don't really need them in this case, so I'm just going to undo those. All right, so now let me show you text on a circle. So I'm going to grab and make a nice perfect circle here. Now I grab my type tool. In this case, because it is a circle, a closed path, just using the type tool and I click here, when I see a little change, I notice that it goes from a square to a circle. And this is a signification that it, or a warning or whatever, that it is actually going to go into an area type. And so if I click right now, we're seeing it drop in the placeholder text as area type. And that's not what I want to show you right now, but that's how you would do it. Area type. So it's as easy as that to have type inside. Now let's go back and click down on the type tool and look for type on a path tool. So when you have a closed shape, you have to use the type on a path tool. Then you can come over here and click, I guess, whenever you're on the path, and it will plop in your placeholder type. And with the circle, you may want your beginning to be perfectly in the center or perfectly at bottom, etc. So this is a great place for that white arrow to then select those beginning and ending points and move those around. In this case, actually moving the middle one might be a better solution. Put that right at the center, for example, so you have a nice start and flow all the way around. Or if you use the middle one, you could pull it through to flip it to the inside. I don't think I showed you that up here. You could do that up here as well. Select it and you can click and drag to flip it upside down if you want to. And this is when you would want the type to be read this way. And so then you would grab this middle one and then rotate it around so you could see the type from this point of view. All right, so that's how you would do that. It's super fun and crazy. Always look out for that little red overset text thing. It means there's text that's not being seen, which is dangerous. And so you'd have to, in this case, select all the type and make it a bit smaller to get it all to fit. There you go. It could be tricky to, in this case, so this is a good example of like, okay, let's make those as close together as possible if you want the type to flow all the way around. And then let's increase this as much as possible. So now it's overset. If you go back one, there's still a pretty big gap right there. And so this is where you can use something called tracking. Increase that. Basically, it's the space between letters. And you can nudge that up little by little to get that as close as you want it to be. So there you go. That's how you would do that. Now let's take a look at formatting our text. Formatting text deals with our font choice, the font style, whether it's bold or italic or regular or condensed or extended, etc. And then there's also the space around the type. So there's the kerning, the tracking, the leading, the space between the lines, and many other features as well. So let's click on this word Zephyr using the black arrow tool. It is now selected. Select it to affect it. And with it selected, we are seeing under the Properties panel this character panel right here. So this is a miniature version where we're seeing the most commonly used aspects of a character editing. If you want to see more, you can always click on these three arrows, three dots, and it opens up the full version. And then when you're done making your edit, whatever you click on, it will pop back to this one. That's very fine, but I don't super love this one because when I go to look for a new typeface, it just feels a little bit too claustrophobic for me way down in this corner. It's just a weird feeling I get. That's just me, maybe, I don't know. But you can also come up here if you have Essentials Classic Workspace and click on Character, and it gives you the full version right away. You make your settings, and then when you're done, you choose a different type size. You click off of it away onto the artboard and it just disappears, which could be really handy, very clean. But I actually like mine to stay out for some reason. So if I go to Window, you would expect it to say character, but there's no character word right here. The trick is that you have to go all the way down to type. Go to type and then character. And you're going to see that the key command for this panel is Command T as in Tom on a Mac. If you're using Windows, then it's probably Control T, okay? And that's giving us our character panel, and we can move this around wherever we like. And I like this because when I go to look for a font, we're seeing Myriad Variable Concept as the current typeface. If I click on this arrow right next to it, I get a bigger window here, and it just feels a little nicer for me. Now, let's look at all these different options. I'm going to start over here on the far right. So we're seeing that if I could look at the sample text, large, medium, or smaller. So do you see that the sample text right here is changing size? It could actually be really nice to see the small version to see how readable it is when it's very small, because sometimes our logos and different things need to have a lot of clarity. So make sure your typeface that you choose has clarity built into it at a small size. I'm going to go back to the medium one. The next thing you could choose is the selected text. So by default, it's probably just the word that you have selected, but you can also choose the word typography. or the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, which is a sentence that includes all of the letters of the alphabet, I believe, or the alphabet, or whatever. The only problem with these is that it's cutting it off, and I'm not able to change the size of this box. So I find that a little wonky, okay? Most of the time, probably selected text is what we're going for. Now, over here we have fonts, and then we have filters. And so notice there's a funnel right here, like a funnel that you'd use to add oil into your car engine. And so just scrolling through here, there's hundreds of fonts. I have hundreds of fonts on my computer, and there's more I've downloaded from Adobe, and there's a lot to search for. So if you're just going to scroll through looking for the right thing to magically appear, like it could be very time consuming and strenuous, okay? So having this filter is super helpful. So hopefully you have some vision for whether you want your type to be sans serif or serif to begin with, or slab serif, which is a heavier, thicker version of serif, or calligraphic, handwritten, or Gothic, and all these different options. There's also the properties, whether it's thin or regular or heavy, whether it's condensed, which is what you would use. So remember we talked about type crime, and if you stretch out the type to try to get it to fit, it can look really bad. But there's actually type that's designed to be extra narrow to fit more letters in a space. So look for condensed if you're trying to press things in. There's regular, and then extended as if like, wow, I really want to fill the space out, but I don't want to stretch out my type. You could actually choose purposely created fonts, extended versions of type that are made for that purpose, and they look 100% better 100% of the time, okay? Maybe 99.99 or something, but anyways, there's other options here you could look for. I'm going to search for slab serif and go heavyweight. So you can see out of my hundreds of options, I'm narrowed down to like 12 or something like that. So I can just cruise through here and find ones that I like. And if I like it, I can actually put a star. You could say I put a star next to those ones. So hey, I like this one, I'm going to put a star. I think I might like that one too and put a star. So then you can come up here, my favorite ones, click the star, and it really super duper narrows it down to really focus on just those ones that you might choose from. Okay, I'm going to deselect my star so we could see all of these again. Another thing that you can choose is right here where it says show similar fonts. If you click on that, it's going to show you other fonts that you have on your system that look somewhat like, based on the weight, the style, etc. They look somewhat like the one that you're trying to filter to. So that is really cool as well. To get out of here, click on back to go back to this view. Another thing to point out here is, let's go up here. So we have show recently added. If you know you just downloaded something recently through the Adobe font page, you could click here and see recently loaded. I still have my filter on right now, so we're not seeing anything because of that filter. I could clear my filter, and now we're seeing, now I need to click on this again, I think. So there we go. We're seeing the fonts I've downloaded recently. However they decide recent, I'm not sure. Some of these have been a little while ago, but anyways, a nice way to find what's most recent that you've downloaded. And I'm going to turn that off. And then the next one I'm going to click on is show added fonts. So these are all the ones that I've added through my Adobe subscription. You're seeing over here on the far right the cloud with the check mark. So that means they're Adobe and that they're loaded onto my system. They're accessible to me. All right, and I could just scroll through all of these many different options here. Now that we're talking about Adobe fonts specifically, you can click up here. So I'm going to turn this option off. None of these filters are selected right now. I'm going to click on Find More. So Find More, notice that these have a little Adobe Clouds, but there's no check mark next to them. So these are ones I do not yet have downloaded. So this is another way I could filter through all of my type of what I could find through Adobe to find, you could spend a lifetime looking through all of these options, because a lot of these have a little arrow on the left side too, and you could open up and see the extra light version, the light version, the semi-light, the regular, the semi-bold, the bold, the extra bold. Wow! So many options, but it's so cool. All right, so if you want to download from here, you could actually download them from here, add those to your system by clicking on that little cloud. Another way to see this is going to your Creative Cloud. Or you can actually just go to your Adobe font page. Well, let me show you. So click on Creative Cloud. You're logged into your Creative Cloud. You can click up here for font, and you're going to see Adobe Fonts. And then you could click on Launch, and basically it just takes you to this Adobe Font web page. I've already have one open, so I'm just going to close this one. My internet's pretty slow right now. And so you're going to see a page that looks more or less like this right now. They change it probably a lot, so it may not look like this later when you're watching this video, but maybe. You're seeing all these different ways to filter your fonts on the left, whether it's calligraphic or clean or done by a pen, or whether it's friendly or rough or what have you, all these different kinds of filters to help you narrow down what you're looking for. You could also type in your keyword if you have the name of a business that you're trying to create a font or a logo for, something like that. You could type in I don't know, Bobby Auto Parts or whatever it is. You could change the size with a slider. So it's a really fun way to look for type. Clear filters. My internet's super slow. I liked how it was a moment ago, but I can't really take time on the video to get back there. Brother. Oh, man. Anyways, what's kind of fun is that you could click on these. There's like almost like little advertisements for these particular different typefaces. Click on those, and usually they have some fun examples of how that font has been applied in different ways. Click on the little arrow to scroll through and see different options. Yeah, and have a ton of fun. And you can even download them often from here. You could say add. Oh yeah, right here at the bottom, add font, etc. Okay, so let's get back to our Illustrator program. Okay, so now let's look at this. So we have this font. I was going to go with this one, Filters, Slab Serif, Heavyweight, this Museo Slab 900, okay? I'm not going to go into all the reasons why, but I'm just going to use it, okay? So there's my font choice. Whoops. Now the next option is the font style. In this particular case, I only have the 100 and 900. You're going to see things like with other type, for example, what's one that has a lot? Well, I showed on the other word a moment ago had bold and regular and light italic, etc. So yeah, those are options that you have with the font style. So I actually like this one too. I'm just going to go with that one. We're now seeing the type size. So this is how you would make your type bigger or smaller. And one little fun fact is 72 points. I'm just going to select that. Means 72 points is from the baseline to the top of a capital font, a capital letter. That is exactly 1 inch. So 72 points equals 1 inch. So that's what those points mean. They're actually a unit of measurement. Cool little fun fact you should know as a designer. Okay. Yeah, I want one that's just a little about the width of my thing. So because this is point type, I could actually click and drag the bounding box. And remember, I always want to hold down my shift key, and then hopefully those smart guides will pop out and help me as well. They're not really helping me. There we go. I don't know. I don't want to take too much time fiddling around, so something like that. So now click on my word again to make sure it's selected to affect it. And then the next thing we can notice is the leading. So because I only have one line of type, it doesn't really make sense right now, but if I were to click right here, hit return, and go for a second line of type like Zephyr computers, I don't know, just trying to think of a word. And let's say that I wanted these words to be much closer together. There's a lot of leading between these two words. I'm just going to go over here and make it smaller. So like 24, kind of a big jump there. So you don't have to go for these preset numbers. You could click on right there as well, 25, 26, 27, whatever. So they're nice and snug together. One thing designers think about is how things are compact. And there's this idea of proximity. Where the closer things are together, the more they feel like they belong together. So it's a way of creating unity. this feels more like a visual unit than how it felt before, whatever that was. Oh, what's happening right now? Select it to affect it. You got to select it. It was like on 40 or something crazy like that. So it's like so much space. They feel like two separate things instead of one thing. So be thinking about that when you're designing. I'm just going to get rid of that word computers, back to the word Zephyr. Now we have next on our list is our kerning. And so if you notice, you kind of want to look for all those negative spaces between the lines. I'm not going to take a ton of time to talk about it here, but if you feel like there's a little bit too much space between certain letters, you just click in between them to get the cursor flashing back and forth, and you can adjust the number here. -10, for example, you notice that R moved a teeny bit. -50 make it more obvious. So you can snug letters closer together. If you're wanting to snug all of the letters closer together, select the whole thing and then come over here, and this is tracking. So here you're seeing a V/A, and there's one little arrow, so that's to signify moving one little letter. The space between letters is what that's trying to signify. Here we have V and A, and then you see two arrows kind of extended, so it's showing about the distance of the whole word. And so here we can, snug everything a little closer together, -25 or something like that. And again, that helps it to feel more like a visual unit. You don't want to go so far that it's unreadable or that letters start to get too distorted. There's -100. That's still readable, but it starts looking a little unclear. It depends what you're going for in terms of meaning, etc. But you might definitely want to consider snugging up your tracking when you're designing type for your business. And so because we did that, we need to increase the point size a little bit to get it to line up alignment. So be thinking about those things, okay? And usually I do the tracking first, and then I would come back and look for where it feels like a little bit too much space, maybe between this P and the H, and then I would play with the kerning. One way to think about kerning is popcorn kernel. You think of one kernel, one space is a kern. So that's one way to think about it as well. Okay, next on our list is the vertical scale versus a horizontal scale. You probably want these to be 100%, both of these 100%. If they're not, that's where that type crime comes in, and that's where the type police come whizzing to your house and throwing you in jail. So be careful of committing a type crime. And what's great is that you can actually see if you've done it or not, because sometimes you might, you're doing something, you think you have the shift key down, but maybe you actually bump it or something. And so you can look here and say, oh yeah, it's 100% on this one, but this one's 127%. I've actually stretched it out a lot. So I'm going to fix that and go back to 100%. Okay? So as long as they're 100%, both of them, or at least the same, both of them, I would go for 100%, to be honest. The next thing we have is a baseline shift. So like, for example, we wanted just to move this one letter E and move it up or down. We can, negative's going to move it down lower. Positive's going to make that letter go up higher. Sometimes you may need to do that for a specific purpose, so you could do that with the baseline shift. This, line that goes across the bottom that the type sits on is called the baseline. The next thing we have is a rotation, so you could actually rotate individual letters, flip them upside down, like whatever. I mean, this is a very rare kind of thing, but you might want to use that, and then you would definitely need to fix it, right? So like, I like the upside down letter, but we have this big gap now, and so it becomes kind of a problem, but you can fix it. The next thing we have here is, hey, I want this in all caps. You don't have to retype it. You could simply click that, and maybe this particular typeface is not allowing that. So, oh well, that's too bad. So, again, type is designed for specific things, and maybe the designer of this font said, hey, I don't want that to happen, or maybe you have to pay extra or whatever. Find a different version of the font, or in this case you would just have to go in and type in the capital letters to get that. But some fonts will allow you to just simply click on that and it will make it all caps. Here you can make all caps, but the small letters are small caps, and so for some reason it allowed that. I'm not sure. Oh, there I go. What's going on? Did I not have it selected? So it's doing it now. I'm not sure what I did. I am a human being after all. Okay. Um, and then you could do like superscript, subscript. You typically wouldn't do that to a whole word. You would do it to just get away from there. Like if you had a Roman little numeral or something next to your word, again, a rare use kind of thing. If you need your word underlined, go ahead and select it. You can underline your word here. And if you want to have a strike through, say, hey, this word is here, but we're crossing it out. You could do that with this option here. So there we go. I shall say no more about the character panel. There's some other options lurking here, but they get a little bit more advanced, and this is good enough for now. All right? See you in the next one. Oh my goodness, I forgot to talk about the paragraph panel. I just want to speak about it briefly, and I also realized that I had half my face covered up for a lot of that last section, so is what it is. I don't feel like repeating myself, so I'm just going to leave it and celebrate the perfection. Okay, so the paragraph panel, we need some paragraph kind of text, also known as copy. So we're seeing this here, and I'm just going to back off a little bit so we could see more of it. Okay, so we have this column of text, and basically you have paragraph options over here because this is selected under the properties area. Click on those three dots to see more, etc. Also, with Essentials Classic, we see this paragraph option up here, or my favorite, window, type, and our paragraph panel, which also has the character tab as well, so you could actually go between the two very readily. Now, this first section is just the alignment, whether your text is like left aligned. I'm just going to select this one paragraph, double clicking in there. So left aligned right now, or it could be center aligned, or right aligned, or justified with the last line going to the left. Justified means it's going to the edges on both sides, or justified down the center, etc. So now the ending line is down the center too. Anyways, I'm just going to leave it at left aligned. You could also set bullet point here, or a numbered list kind of thing, or if you click on the little arrow, you could change it to letters. Those kinds of options are available there. And then we also have sort of an indentation or padding between this very outer edge of the type, and you could inset it. So you could click on this to inset the type there as well. Undoing that, just putting in a 0. This next one down here is for the first line left indent. So if you want an indentation for all of your paragraphs, it would automatically do that if I selected this whole article and put 25 whatever, so everything would be indented. So you have control over all of these things. This one has to do with the space before a paragraph and the space after a paragraph, whether you're going to use hyphenation or not. You can affect, like up here, this word Zephyr has a hyphen, so it's affecting how the layout is going. You could turn it off and or turn it on actually, so the word definition is getting a hyphen. If you turn it off, now it's not getting a hyphen. This is just a little whatchamacallit. Okay, I don't want to say any more about this, so we're just going to move on for the sake of time. Now let's explore text outlines. Text outlines are amazing because you've done all of this work of finding the right typeface, adjusting all the sizing and the tracking, etc., getting everything just right. And now we can convert that type into vector shapes that you can then edit with any of the vector editing tools like Shape Builder, the direct selection tool, moving those anchor points and paths around to make the type even more unique and special, and possibly even adding like little symbols in there, etc., to make the work even more meaningful. Okay, so it's super fun. Here's how you do it. First of all, select it to affect it, and then I highly recommend always making a copy of this, because if you don't, once we go into the text outline mode, it will no longer be attached to the typeface or the font, and you will forget what font that is. Like, what font was I using? I can't recreate that. And so I'm going to hold down Option on my Mac or Alt on Windows and click and drag. Or you can always just go to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste to make a duplication. All right, I'm just going to set mine way down over there. Get out of here. You silly type. All right. What's going on over there? Okay. Here's our word. It is still type. I can click in there and do all the stuff, delete letters, etc. But I don't want to do that. I want to select it all, black arrow, bounding box. Now I'm going to go to type, create outlines. There's even a key command for this, Shift Command O on a Mac, probably Shift Control O on Windows. You could try and see. Even though it looks exactly the same, well, I'm going to undo that. So notice where the bounding box is lying, there's actually a bit of space between the letter and the bounding box on this particular example, and a lot of space up here. Watch what happens when I go to Type, Create Outline. You're seeing that the bounding box is now exactly to the edge of the shape. So if you're really wanting to align this with a image-based logo or something, this will help you get that exact alignment, whereas when it's just in the type bounding box, there can be a little weird gap there. So that's one thing to note. Another thing to note is that by default, this is all in a group. So even if I'm not selected on it and I click on just one part, this is all connected together by group mode. You can simply double click into there to edit different pieces in isolation mode and then double click to get out. But sometimes it's a little annoying to double click so many times. So for this example, I'm just going to go to Object, Ungroup. Okay, so now I can more readily move things around. One thing to note is that if you want to nudge things left and right, up and down, and keep that perfect horizontal, for example, if I wanted to nudge this I to closer to the G, for example, I can just use my arrows on my keyboard, right nudge, left nudge. If you hold down the Shift key, it will be more obvious nudges, and that's keeping it perfect horizontal as I do that. And sometimes I literally even count. I'm like, okay, I'm going to move this I 1, 2, 3 times. I'm going to move this I 1, 2, 3 times. And that's a way I do things to keep things organized or equal. So you could be aware of that. Another thing, I'm just trying to undo a bunch of those, get it back where it was. Another thing you might want to be aware of is if you click on the artboard, your properties are going to show for the artboard, and you're going to see preferences, keyboard increment. By default, it's 0.001. You might want to change that to 0.002 or something like this, or you can even type in 12 PTS for points. I guess that's 0.001. How about something else? 24 PT for points. So then you're getting 0.33 inches. So that's going to make a more dramatic difference when you hit the arrow key. Okay? That was pretty extreme. Okay. Anyways, I want you to know that you can make that adjustment. Properties, and I'm just going to go back to maybe 002. Okay. Now, let me show you some ways you might think about making your word more interesting. So notice that you have specific shapes. I might select that and grab my shape builder tool. Maybe Origins just so happens to be a company that produces oranges. And so they use orange as an icon or metaphor for their business, even if they don't produce oranges. Maybe it's something they just love. So I'm using the shape builder tool and just clicking and dragging to close that O. And so I have that awesome shape that's now filled in. Maybe I could also come over here and grab the top of that I and just do a copy, edit copy, and double click out of that group mode and paste it, edit paste. And so now it just popped over down here. I could see it selected. And so now I have this shape, and maybe it could be a pumpkin. Does this company have anything to do with pumpkins, right? You could think about all of these things, or maybe you want to change it to a different color, like white, and then have that be the center of the O instead. Have it be a smaller center. Maybe there's some kind of significance with this. And what's nice about it is that you're echoing this perfect shape. It's not an exact square. It's a little bit rounded on the top and bottom, so it's pretty distinctive. And so you're echoing, you're repeating that shape in different places, and that could add a sense of inner harmony and uniqueness. So that before, this typeface did not have that, and now it has a distinctive quality. Or if it's up here, maybe we can come up here and make it green. So it looks like a little pumpkin or an orange or something like that. So this is the kind of thinking I want you to think about. I'm going to delete that one. Another edit we could make, and this is kind of a crazy idea. Actually, it's going to undo it a bunch of times to bring that O back. So there's the O again. Now I'm kind of seeing like these eyes could be like little stick figures. So think about how things could become something else is something you're going to want to think about. I'm going to select this one. I'm going to do an Option, click and drag to duplicate this, or Alt on Windows. And I'm going to rotate it, holding down my Shift key to do that perfect 90 degrees. And I'm also going to make it a bit smaller. And I'm going to bring it back up here. So my idea is that it's becoming like a little arm, and that this is a head and a body. And so we're going to have a couple little people here that are, maybe they're like little mechanics. Maybe Origins is some kind of store where they work on stuff, and you have these little people working on the letter G or something, you know? So it needs to make sense. Like, it can't just be these random little fun pictures. It needs to connect with the brand and what they're about, etc. So now the problem is that you can't really see them. It's like orange on orange. So let's select all of these figures, clicking and dragging over them, and maybe make them black or some color like that so they stand out really well. We now have a stacking order issue, or maybe not. Like, maybe that works as it is. And now we could play with bringing those all the way forward, doing certain key commands, or you can go up here to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. And so that's another idea. These little figures are doing something with this G, right? So that's really fun. Another idea I have is undoing those really quick. All my hard work just going to naught. All right, another idea is repeating this O. So this idea of origins and the idea of the sun rising up every morning as the beginning of a day. So it could be a really nice symbol to have a sun. So I'm going to echo the shape of this O. I'm just going to Option, click and drag on my Mac, or Alt, click and drag on your Windows computer. And I'm going to make this really big by just, holding down my Shift key. I really want to keep those true proportions to the original letter and have this in here. And now let's make this yellow or something, maybe a lighter orange or yellow. That's kind of a weird yellow. Let's try that yellow. Maybe that works. And make sure that's all the way behind everything else it is. Maybe it's a little bit too big. So you could play around with the sizes of things, maybe make a whole bunch of different versions with different sizes of the different pieces. So yeah, I'm just playing with where that could be placed. Maybe it could even echo the original, holding down the Shift key again, Shift and Option or Alt to keep it from the center, going bigger, smaller, sending that all the way to the back. I'm just playing around, like, could this be a sun? Could this be something that fits with the brand? And so I highly recommend an attitude of play. What happens if I rotate it 90 degrees? Does it fit in there better? I don't know. It feels kind of busy. So you're just trying these kinds of things out. Another thing you might consider is, what if that was cut in half? So then you could have two pieces. Let me, how can I do this readily? I'm going to grab a rectangle tool and click and drag over this. I was hoping the Smart Guide might help me find the center of that other shape. So what I'm going to do, since the Smart Guide isn't so smart in this case, I am going to, I was hoping it would kind of snap in place or something. How can I do this perfect half? So there's the perfect height of it. So now I could look at my measurements. Height is 2.486. I could do 1.243. 1.243. Enter. So I know this is now exactly the same height. I know there's other ways to do that, but that's just what I'm coming up with right now. Selecting both of those, grabbing my Shape Builder tool to cut this stuff away. So now I have just the bottom half of this O, and maybe that could go down here, right? And maybe I could copy that again and hold down my Shift key and flip that all around and do that there. Or maybe it could be over here. So you could do things like this, and it could have meaning. You're thinking of maybe flowing from one into the other. How does that fit with the brand? Just keep playing and looking for things that resonate. It does take play, it does take experimentation, but every once in a while, and hopefully more often than not, you're going to end up coming up with something that is a really good solution that flows well with the math, the geometry, the shapes of things, and also has metaphorical or symbolic meaning that affirms what the company is about. And it looks unique and different and cool. It's not just a basic word anymore. It's something special. So those are some ideas to think about. I guess another thing to think about is zooming in and remember that you have the direct selection tool. Click on a word. You can move any of these anchor points. So you could just do fun things like this. Maybe turn the G into a funnel or a trumpet or something, right? Like I don't think it makes sense necessarily in this case unless Origins had to do with the music. And so now you have a trumpet or something, and maybe we could turn the O into a little guitar. I mean, you have to be careful because if you get too crazy and too complex, like it will just be too distracting and it looks gimmicky and wacky, too wacky, unless the company is all about wacky. And so you have to keep those things in mind. All right. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Let me know if you have any questions. Just send me an email, whatever. And I look forward to seeing what you do with text outlines.